"You need a home and I need a mommy," said the little girl to the young homeless woman at the bus. Winter draped the city like a heavy blanket woven from white snowflakes. The streets were quiet, filled only with the sound of wind brushing past tall buildings and the faint golden glow of streetlights falling across the frozen ground. In the stillness, a small house at the end of the block glimmered like a solitary candle. Inside, life moved slowly, as if the wooden walls themselves were trying to hold on to the warmth left behind by a family missing a part of its heart. Daniel Carter, an architect, had learned to live with the hollow space left after his wife's passing. His work gave him structure and stability, but the house carried a silence too heavy to ignore. Only Maya, his 5-year-old daughter with bright eyes and an innocent spirit, brought laughter and a flicker of light into a home that had grown far too quiet. For Maya, the world was never short of wonders. Every falling leaf, every snowflake on the window pane was a story waiting to be told. For Daniel, however, the world was built differently, with blueprints, straight lines, proportions, and structures designed never to collapse. Perhaps it was that very difference that made father and daughter two halves perfectly balancing one another. Neither of them knew that on a snowy night that seemed like any other, a single chance encounter would change everything they thought they knew about home, about family, and about love. The snow fell heavier that evening. Daniel held Maya's hand as they hurried down the street toward the bus stop. Work had kept him late, and he was picking her up from daycare later than usual. He pulled his coat collar higher while Maya skipped beside him, her little boots leaving neat round prints in the snow. "Daddy, today the snow looks like giant cotton balls," Maya chirped, stretching out her small hand to catch the flakes. Daniel smiled faintly, though fatigue still lingered in his eyes. At the bus stop, the yellow streetlight shone against the icy metal shelter. On the bench sat a frail figure, wrapped in a threadbare coat. Maya stopped, tilting her head. The young woman sat motionless, pale blue eyes heavy with exhaustion, her breath trembling in the cold, clutching a worn cloth tote as if it were her last tether to the world. Daniel glanced once, accustomed to seeing forgotten souls scattered across the city. Normally, he would keep walking. But before he could tug his daughter along, Maya slipped free of his hand. She stepped closer, her pink mittens resting gently against the woman's coat. "You need a home, and I need a mommy," Maya whispered, her voice soft as snow. Daniel spun around, startled. "Maya?" He rushed forward, heart racing, kneeling as he pulled her back. His eyes narrowed at the stranger. "What are you doing with my daughter?" The woman slowly raised her hands, palms open. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "Nothing. I didn't touch her. She came over to me." Daniel studied her closer. Her skin was flushed in the wrong places, lips cracked, body trembling with cold. The thin coat did nothing against the winter air. He realized this wasn't a performance. Maya tugged his sleeve, innocent eyes wide. "I gave her a bear cookie, Daddy. She was hungry." She pointed to the crumbs in the snow, where a scrawny cat was pawing at the remains. Daniel froze. The woman hadn't begged, hadn't spoken first. Yet her silence roared louder than anything he had heard all day. He turned to leave, but then, thud. The woman tried to stand, her knees buckled, and she crashed against the frozen metal post before collapsing into the snow. "Daddy!" Maya cried, tugging his coat. Daniel dropped beside her. 2 fingers pressed against the woman's neck, her pulse, faint but there. Sweat slicked her forehead, fever burning hot, while her body was ice cold. A raw scrape marked her thin hand. Her breathing was shallow, lips pale and cracked. She was sick. No time to think. Daniel lifted her into his arms. She was shockingly light. Her coat fell open slightly, revealing bruised arms. She whimpered weakly against his chest. "Let's go, Maya," Daniel said firmly, voice low. "Is she going to die?" Maya asked, her voice trembling. Not if we get her warm. They hurried through the snow, footsteps crunching in the still night. Daniel's house was only 3 blocks away, but every step felt unbearably heavy. He didn't know who this woman was, what her name might be, or what story she carried, but from the moment she collapsed, something inside him had shifted. He could have walked away. Perhaps he should have, but he didn't. As they neared the porch, Maya whispered, "I still think she's our home." Daniel gave no reply. He simply opened the door. The fire in the hearth crackled softly. He laid the young woman gently on the living room sofa and covered her with a thick wool blanket. Maya climbed onto the couch, eyes wide with wonder. "Daddy, is she a lost princess?" Her innocent question made Daniel pause. Sophia stirred beneath the warm wool blanket, her lashes fluttering slightly. The air carried a faint trace of cedarwood and cinnamon. As she opened her eyes, the room slowly came into focus. The flickering glow of the fireplace, polished wooden floors, towering bookshelves filled with volumes on architecture, and somewhere in the kitchen, the quiet sounds of cooking. She was lying on a long sofa, a cushion tucked behind her head. A folded coat rested neatly at the end of the couch. Sophia didn't remember being brought here. Only the cold, the bus stop, and the small little girl. Then she heard the soft scratch of crayons. Maya was sitting cross-legged on the rug, her head tilted with concentration, drawing with fierce focus. The paper was filled with bright colors showing 3 figures holding hands, one tall, one small, and in the middle a figure with golden hair glowing like a halo. Above it, the girl had scrawled, "My home." Sophia blinked, stunned. She tried to sit up, but her head throbbed, her body resisting. Even that small movement was enough to catch Maya's attention. The girl jumped up, beaming, and ran to her. "You're awake," Maya exclaimed, holding up the picture. "This is us." "It's us?" Sophia whispered weakly. Maya nodded with solemn seriousness. "Daddy said you can stay until you're better, but I think you should stay longer." Before Sophia could respond, Daniel walked into the room, his expression unreadable. He set down a glass of water and a small bowl of soup on the table. "You collapsed in the snow," he said evenly. "I had no choice. You needed help. When you're well again, you'll leave." His voice wasn't cruel, only firm. Still, Sophia felt a sting in her chest. "Thank you," she murmured, her eyes cast downward. Maya lingered, clearly eager to chat more, but Daniel gently took her hand. "Let her rest." The rest of the day passed in quiet. At dinner, Sophia insisted on sitting at the kitchen counter, apart from the father and daughter's usual seats. She ate slowly, politely, asking for nothing beyond what was offered. When Daniel wasn't looking, she smiled softly at Maya's innocent stories. About school, about her princess dress, and her plans to build a snow bakery in the backyard. But each time Daniel's eyes turned toward her, Sophia lowered her gaze. After dinner, as she helped clean up, she reached for a tray of cups. The loose sleeve of her sweater slid down, revealing a long, raised scar along her wrist, faded with time but still visible. Daniel said nothing, yet the image seared itself into his mind. That night, long after the house had gone quiet, Daniel tossed restlessly in bed. Then he heard a faint sound from the living room, a low, pained moan. Barefoot, he stepped out. Sophia was curled tightly on the sofa, her face pale and damp with sweat, her eyes shut in distress. She whimpered, barely audible. Daniel hesitated, then picked up his phone. An hour later, the private doctor arrived. Sophia stirred only faintly as she was examined. "She's severely dehydrated, high fever," the doctor muttered. "She'll need fluids, rest, and warmth." He paused. "Does she have insurance? Any family we should notify?" Sophia shifted slightly, her voice breaking. "No one. There's no one who cares if I live or die." The words froze the air around them. The doctor asked no more, only left instructions before heading back out into the snowy night. Daniel stood silently for a long time, watching her sleep. He didn't know her story, but he knew the face of pain. He had once seen it in the mirror, the day the hospital called to say his wife was gone, leaving him with an infant and a silence that threatened to swallow him whole. Before returning to his room, Daniel stopped by the kitchen. The next morning, Sophia woke to sunlight filtering through the curtains. Her head still ached, but the fever had broken. On the table beside the sofa sat a steaming cup of tea. The scent of ginger and honey drifted gently in the air. Beneath the cup lay a neatly folded napkin. She unfolded it. "You are not invisible." The handwriting was steady and precise. Her lips trembled. For the first time in years, someone had truly seen her. The next morning, the house was filled with the gentle fragrance of thyme and ginger. Sophia moved quietly through the kitchen, her golden hair loosely tied back, her sleeves rolled up. She was determined to help. "Let me contribute something," she said softly. "I feel better when I can do something useful." Daniel did not object. Now she stood by the stove, stirring a pot of soup made from the leftover vegetables in the pantry. The kitchen seemed warmer with her presence. Maya sat at the table, humming a little tune as she colored. Daniel walked in, laptop tucked under his arm. "Smells wonderful." Sophia glanced at him and smiled faintly. "It's just something simple. I learned it from an elderly couple in Queens. They taught me how to turn scraps into warmth." He tasted a spoonful and froze. The flavor was exactly the same as the soup his wife used to make. The hint of rosemary, the bite of pepper, and that subtle sweetness he had never been able to name. He looked up at Sophia. She remained calm, unaware of the storm of emotions rising inside him. She stood there as if she naturally belonged, as though her presence was part of this home. Yet within him, something still pulled back, not suspicion, but reflex. Years of living to protect Maya. Years of surviving through reason, not feeling. In the days that followed, Sophia began to recover. As her strength returned, she offered to help more around the house, chopping vegetables, washing dishes, even organizing shelves in the living room. Maya was delighted, clinging to Miss Sophia, telling endless stories from school and pulling her into imaginary ice bakery games. Daniel watched it all in silence. A part of him welcomed the warmth returning to the house, but another part held firm to his caution. He still didn't know who Sophia truly was, and letting a stranger so close to his daughter was something he could not take lightly. One evening, while Sophia was reading Maya a bedtime story, Daniel sat in his study, the pale glow of his laptop illuminating his face. He typed in Sophia, with a few vague details he had picked up from her. With just a few clicks, the truth surfaced. An old headline appeared. "Promising interior design student accused of stealing at National Showcase." Her photo filled the screen, Sophia, younger, hair neat, eyes bright with ambition. The caption beneath it sank heavily in his chest. Though never convicted, the scandal cost the young student her scholarship, her reputation, and her community's trust. Daniel leaned back, weighed down by the discovery. He wanted to believe in the Sophia he saw here, gentle, kind with Maya. But the shadow of her past gnawed at him. The next day, when Sophia walked out holding a stack of neatly folded linens, Daniel stopped her. "Can I ask you something?" She paused, her gaze steady. "You looked me up." Daniel hesitated. "Yes, I saw the article." He held out his phone. Sophia glanced at it, unsurprised. "I figured it was impossible to escape that." Daniel's voice was firm. "Did you do it?" The silence stretched. Then she shook her head. "No, I didn't." Her voice was calm, not pleading, just stating the truth. "But why did everyone—" Daniel began, but she cut in with a humorless smile. Because people needed someone to blame, I was expected to shine. When the scandal broke, sponsors pulled out, my landlord raised the rent, friends disappeared. And the person I trusted most emptied my account. All I had left was this old tote bag. Daniel stood in silence. The pieces aligned, the weary eyes, the scar on her wrist, the weight in her silence that night. Sophia turned slightly away. You don't like loose ends. You're someone who needs things clean, clear, certain. Am I right? Daniel frowned faintly. She was right. He was an architect. He never left cracks in his blueprints. And now Sophia was the crack he didn't know how to repair. Sophia drew a long breath. I didn't steal anything. That design was mine. But after a while, no one wanted the truth. They only wanted closure, even if it meant destroying me. Her eyes met his, steady, searching. So tell me, do you believe me? Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it. His silence was answer enough. Sophia gave a soft, bitter smile. Thank you. At least you're honest. She turned and walked toward the living room, where her old tote still rested beneath the couch. Maya ran out, wrapping her arms around Sophia. Where are you going? Sophia knelt, brushing the child's hair tenderly. I have to leave, Maya. But don't forget, you gave me the most precious gift. You called me Mommy. She placed a small teddy bear in Maya's hands. Keep him close so you won't be lonely. Maya cried, clinging tightly. Daniel stood by the staircase, frozen, the scene slicing deep into him. Sophia did not look back. She kissed Maya's forehead, opened the door, and slipped into the falling snow. That night, the house was drowned in silence. Maya refused to sleep, whispering. She didn't even say goodbye. Daniel sat by her bed, voice hoarse. I know, but to me, she was already family. In the darkness, only the sound of muffled sobs remained, heavy as the snow falling outside. That night, Daniel's house felt unbearably quiet. Maya lay in bed, clutching the teddy bear Sophia had left, her wide eyes refusing to close. Every now and then, she sat up, peering out the window as if waiting for a familiar figure to return. Daniel sat in his study, staring at unfinished sketches, each line unsteady. From the next room, he could hear his daughter's muffled sobs, and his chest tightened. Losing his wife had once convinced him he could never endure another loss. Yet now, the absence of a woman he barely knew left a void deeper than he expected. Near midnight, Daniel opened Maya's door. The room was empty. The blankets were rumpled. His stomach dropped. He bolted down the hallway and into the living room. The front door stood ajar, the night air rushing in. Outside, under the street lamp, Maya's tiny figure trudged across the snow. Her slippers sank into the drifts, her little legs trembling but determined. Maya! Daniel shouted, voice breaking against the wind. She didn't stop. She pressed on toward the faint glow at the end of the street. And there, sitting beneath the lamp, was Sophia. She huddled in her thin coat, clutching her worn tote, eyes lost somewhere far away. Her breath rose in faint clouds, and a low hum slipped from her lips like a forgotten melody. Before Daniel could call out, Maya stumbled and fell. A sharp cry broke from her as her hand scraped against the ice. Blood seeped into the snow, red against the white. But before Daniel could reach her, Sophia was already there. She dropped to her knees, pulling a handkerchief from her coat and pressing it firmly to the wound. Hold still, sweetheart. It's okay. We'll get you back home soon. Her voice was gentle, yet certain, easing pain and fear alike. Maya sobbed, clutching Sophia's hand. Daniel froze for a moment, struck by the sight. The woman he had doubted holding his daughter with undeniable tenderness. He knelt beside them, voice breaking. Maya, you scared me half to death. Through her tears, Maya whispered, I wanted to find Mommy. Daniel lifted his gaze, meeting Sophia's eyes. In that instant, the city disappeared. There was only the three of them, encircled by the streetlight's glow. Thank you, Daniel murmured softly. Sophia said nothing, only held Maya tighter, her hands trembling but steady. And in that moment, the wall Daniel had built for years cracked open. He realized he hadn't seen anyone hold his daughter with such real love since his wife had gone. He looked directly at Sophia, his voice low but trembling. We need you. Maya clung to Sophia's neck, whispering, Don't leave again, Mommy. Sophia's eyes widened, breath catching. That innocent word pierced the deepest wounds inside her. She lifted her gaze to Daniel, his defenses lowered, his vulnerability bared, and then to the child who still believed in unconditional love. For a moment, warmth surged through her chest. She didn't know what the future held, whether her scars would ever fully heal. But she knew one thing. She couldn't walk away again. Daniel wrapped his arms around them both, pulling them close. The snow still fell, but within that embrace lay a warmth he had thought he would never feel again. After that snowy night, Sophia didn't leave again. Daniel never spoke a formal invitation, but each morning when he came downstairs, the sight of Sophia at the counter, her hair tied back, her hands busy with tea or porridge, gradually became something familiar. Maya's happiness was undeniable. She trailed after Sophia from the living room to the backyard, pulling her into games of drawing, building snow castles, and running her pretend bakery. With every burst of laughter, the house, once heavy with silence, shone brighter than it had in years. Sophia remained cautious, keeping a careful distance. At meals, she chose the chair by the kitchen counter, like a guest passing through. But the tenderness in every gesture she gave to Maya made it impossible for Daniel to see her as an outsider. One afternoon, as the three of them baked cookies together, Maya suddenly chirped, "We need more sugar, Mommy." The air stilled. Sophia froze, spoon suspended mid-stir. Daniel glanced at her, ready to say something, then chose silence instead. Maya giggled on, oblivious to the shift. Sophia drew a steadying breath, forcing a faint smile as she returned to the dough. Later, after Maya had gone to bed, Daniel sat in the living room with a book. Sophia entered quietly, carrying a cup of hot tea. "Thank you for not saying anything earlier," she whispered. Daniel looked up. "Maya called you that because in her eyes you deserve it." Sophia shook her head softly. "I don't deserve it. I'm just someone passing through your lives." "Maybe," Daniel replied slowly. "But sometimes the people who arrive unplanned bring the things that matter most." Sophia stayed quiet, her gaze flickering. Daniel saw it clearly, the fear still lingering in her eyes. Fear of rejection, fear of losing everything again. Day by day, Sophia's presence became part of their rhythm. She taught Maya the basics of sketching, folded paper into tiny cranes. Maya proudly decorated the house with them, sticking them to the fridge, the windows, turning the space into a living collage of color. One evening, as Sophia read aloud to Maya, Daniel lingered quietly in the doorway. Watching them together, his chest tightened. Warmth, yes, but also fear. He knew his heart was opening again, more fragile now than it had ever been. The winter days passed, and Daniel's house began to breathe differently. The scent of warm soup, the sound of Maya's laughter, the quiet presence of Sophia in the kitchen, all of it lit the walls in ways Daniel had long forgotten. Yet along with that closeness came another fear, that it was all temporary, as fragile as frost that could melt at any moment. One night after Maya had fallen asleep, the house rested in the soft glow of the fireplace. Sophia sat curled on the sofa, a thin blanket around her shoulders, a cup of tea in her hands. Daniel entered, still holding a book he hadn't been able to read. He sat across from her, silent for a moment, before speaking in a low voice. "You've made this house different, lighter, more alive." Sophia stilled, her gaze flickering. "This is your home, Daniel. I'm only passing through." "No," he shook his head. "You've brought more than that." His voice was low, close, making the walls seem thinner. Silence stretched. Firelight danced in their eyes. Daniel leaned closer, his breath closing the distance. For a heartbeat, the world hushed, as if fate itself offered them a second chance. But just before his lips met hers, Sophia pulled back sharply. "No," she whispered, trembling. "I can't." Daniel froze. "Why not?" Sophia stood, clutching her coat tight. "Because no matter what I do, I'll never be her." The words sank heavy. He knew instantly. Her, the wife he had lost, the mother Maya no longer had. "You think I don't see it?" Sophia's voice cracked. "Every glance, every gesture. I feel like I'm always being measured against someone who's gone. I can't live in that shadow." Daniel rose too, his tone pained but firm. "I never wanted you to be anyone else. I want you. Your scars, your silence, your strength. I don't need perfect. I need real." Sophia trembled, eyes glistening. "That's easy to say, but I've believed before, and it cost me everything. I can't survive losing again." "So you'd rather leave first?" Daniel asked, voice breaking. "Before anyone even has the chance to choose you?" Sophia said nothing. The sorrow in her eyes was deeper than words. Without another word, she turned. The door opened, the night wind rushed in. Daniel stood frozen, fists clenched, not stopping her. The click of the door echoed, leaving him in a silence unfinished. That night, Maya clutched her teddy bear, eyes wet with tears. "Will she come back, Daddy?" Daniel lingered in the doorway, his shadow stretching across the floor. He had no answer. At last he whispered, "I don't know, but I hope so." And in that hush, only father and daughter remained, holding on to hope, while Sophia's figure dissolved into the night. 3 weeks after Sophia left, Daniel's house slipped back into its familiar silence. But this silence was heavier than before, because every corner still carried traces of her warmth. Each morning, Daniel brewed his coffee, and more than once he found himself glancing at the chair by the counter where Sophia used to sit, slicing vegetables or smiling at Maya's chatter. Each evening, Maya still drew pictures, and in every drawing there were always 3 figures: father, daughter, and a woman with golden hair. A month passed in silence, heavier than before. Daniel buried himself in work, though his blueprints blurred more often than not. Every night, Maya asked the same question. "Daddy, will she come back?" And he could only hold her close, whispering, "I don't know, but I hope so." Deep down, he knew the house no longer belonged to just the 2 of them. It was waiting for someone who had left a mark too deep to erase. Then, on a Friday afternoon, 6 weeks after Sophia's departure, a colleague handed Daniel an invitation to a charity showcase supporting women in need. The featured designer, Sophia Lane. The night of the event, the hall glowed with golden light, white silk draped across the ceiling. Furniture and models filled the room, simple yet full of feeling. Daniel recognized her touch in every line, every curve. And then he saw her. 6 weeks had changed her. Sophia stood taller, her braid neat, her eyes no longer lost, but resolute. Yet in her smile lingered a trace of emptiness. The host announced a special speaker. Murmurs rippled as a little girl in a pink dress appeared. "Maya?" She held a crumpled sheet, her voice trembling but clear. "I used to only have Daddy. He's very smart and serious and makes the best waffles, but sometimes he was sad. Then one day we met someone. She had cold hands but a warm heart, and she didn't laugh when I called her Mommy." The hall fell silent. Sophia's hand covered her mouth as tears streamed down. Maya went on. "She didn't stay long, but she left us songs, hugs, and soup that tasted like love. This is my poem. Home is not the walls around me, not pillows soft or beds warm. Home is when she sang to me, kissed my sleepy head. Home is when Daddy smiles and holds her hand. Home is when Mommy is here, and maybe that is tonight. Applause rose, not loud, but reverent. Sophia swayed, her legs barely steady. As Maya stepped down, Daniel appeared from across the room. In his hands was a wooden frame. Inside, pressed behind glass, was the handkerchief Sophia had tied around Maya's hand that snowy night. He stopped before her, voice low. I framed the day we met, because that was when home returned. Sophia's hands trembled. She looked at the scarf, then back at him. I thought I'd left too much damage behind to ever deserve a future. And I thought keeping people away was the only way to protect what I had left, Daniel replied. But letting you in gave us more. Sophia reached into her coat pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper, creased and worn. It was the note Daniel had once left beside her tea. You're not invisible. Her voice broke. You were the first to see me, not the mistakes, not the headlines, me. Daniel nodded, stepping closer. I want to see all of you. No fear, no distance. Sophia turned, eyes falling on Maya waiting by the stage, her face bright with hope. Tears streamed freely now, but they felt lighter. I think I'd like to come home, she whispered. Maya raced forward, arms thrown around Sophia, her laughter ringing like music. The crowd erupted into applause, not for design, not for art, but for something rarer, a family found. The day Sophia returned to Daniel's small house, the snow had begun to melt. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, casting golden streaks across the wooden floor. Maya ran circles around the room, clutching her box of crayons, laughter spilling like music. Mommy's staying! You're not leaving again, right? Sophia knelt down, pulling the little girl into her arms. No, this time I'm staying. Her voice trembled, but her eyes held certainty. Daniel stood nearby, watching quietly. He didn't need words. The faint smile on his lips was enough for Maya to know their home finally held three hearts together. From that day, life shifted. In the morning, Sophia and Maya baked cookies, flour dusting the kitchen like snow. At noon, Daniel worked over his blueprints, but always heard laughter and soft singing drifting from the kitchen. At night, the three sat by the fireplace, Maya telling stories, Daniel listening, Sophia stitching the old handkerchief, now embroidered with new words. Family is the hands that hold when we are lost. One quiet weekend morning, Daniel led Sophia to the last room at the end of the hall, a door he had never opened. When it swung wide, Sophia froze. Inside was a small studio, drafting table, bolts of fabric, pinned color palettes, all prepared with care. On the wall hung a wooden plaque engraved, Sophia's Tomorrow. I wanted you to have a place to begin again, Daniel said softly. A place where dreams could be bigger than fear. Sophia touched the smooth surface of the table, then the soft linen rolled beside it. Her eyes shimmered with tears, but light poured from them brighter than ever. I never imagined someone would build a room for me. But you did. Daniel smiled. Because first, you built something in us. From the kitchen, Maya's clear voice rang out. Hurry, pancakes, Mommy and Daddy. They both laughed. Sophia slipped her hand into Daniel's. In that moment, they understood. They were no longer three lost souls. They were a family, not perfect, but whole. Spring arrived, washing away the bitter winter. In the small garden behind the house, cherry blossoms bloomed pink against the sky. Maya ran in circles, her white dress fluttering, a basket of petals in her hands. At the garden center, Daniel stood before Sophia. He wore a simple suit, his eyes steady, yet deep. Sophia, in a soft cream dress, gazed at him with tears shimmering as if unable to believe the moment was real. Daniel sank to one knee, taking her hand in his. His voice was low, warm, trembling. "Sophia Lane, you walked into my life and turned this house into a home. I can't promise perfection, but I promise to walk with you through every day, both light and dark. Will you be my wife?" Tears rolled down Sophia's cheeks as a radiant smile bloomed. "Yes, I will." Maya's joyous cheer rang out, and petals scattered in the wind like nature's own blessing. Months later, in a small but tender ceremony, Sophia and Daniel became husband and wife. Maya stood between them, clutching a tiny bouquet, her face glowing with joy. As petals floated through the air, she skipped ahead of them, scattering flowers along the aisle, her laughter ringing like bells. When Daniel and Sophia shared their first kiss beneath an arch of white blossoms, applause and laughter surrounded them, not just for the couple, but for the family they had become. They were no longer lost souls weighed down by grief. They had found each other, chosen each other, and built something together. In the wedding photo placed in their living room, the three stood side by side. Daniel steadfast, Sophia graceful, Maya radiant. At the bottom, Sophia's delicate embroidery whispered, "Family doesn't need perfection, only hands that never let go." And that was the final image, a home not built of bricks and walls, but of love, whole, lasting, eternal.